Hi, Cheryl Schmidt here with the introduction to PETA and SATA. So, PETA is a term that actually did not come about until SATA came out. So, PETA is the older technology and it stands for Parallel ATA or Parallel AT Attachment. And PETA was a technology that was created in order to attach internal only storage devices such as hard drives, tape drives, optical drives. So, today, you might find a computer, lots of computers that still have PETA drives installed, and so you might have to replace it. They might want to keep it and put it over in a new machine. So you still have to be aware of PETA and SATA devices and how to configure both of them. Also, your hands-on test number 3 is PETA and SATA, so you need to know how to configure both of them. And it's 50-50 chance as to which one you get. So PETA, the parallel technology, the ones and zeros went down the cable all at the same time. So you would have either 16 or 32 bits, 32 ones or zeros, marching down that cable to go to the other end all together, sort of like a marching band. And with parallel technologies, keeping those ones and zeros together, getting them to arrive at the other end at the same time was challenging. And so one of the things that happened with parallel technology is you couldn't have a very long cable. 18 inches max is what the industry standard, and even though you could buy a longer one, and some of us have had to because the cases we bought. 18 inches is as long as you're supposed to have one. So one of the things about parallel technology is that the ones and zeros from one wire could interfere with the ones and zeros from the adjacent wire, and so that's called crosstalk. And so it's an older technology. You could only get max so many megabits per second on transfer rates, and so it was a technology that's going away and soon to be gone within your lifetime. So it was replaced with SATA, serial ATA, so or serial AT attachment, and it's a newer technology, and it's a serial technology in that the ones and zeros, one wire carries the data, which is lanes of ones and zeros, one behind another. And so it's like a choo-choo train or a stream of ants. Faster speeds can be achieved with this, and it's used for both internal and external devices. I want you to notice this picture right here. This picture I took is two drives, and just physically looking at them, the one on the left is a SATA drive, the one on the right is a PETA drive, and physically, their connectors are different. We're going to talk about that as we go through these series. But just looking at them, they're physically the same size or form factor, but they got different connectors. They have different power requirements. They act differently, but just glancing at them, if you just saw them laying out somewhere, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between SATA and PETA just based on size. So that's not a good one. So let's take a look at a motherboard of what these connectors look like. Here, we'll start with these blue and black connectors right here. This is PETA connectors. There's two of them. Each PETA connector, it's a 40-pin connector. Each connector can have a cable that connects to two devices. So on a motherboard such as this that has two PETA connectors, you could have a maximum of 4 devices. 2 devices that connect to this cable, or the cable that would connect to that connector, and 2 devices that would connect to the black connector. Now, SATA connectors here on the top, there's 4 of them, and those only handle one device. So one connector means one device max. So this motherboard could support a max of 4 SATA devices unless you installed a card that included more SATA ports or a card that included more PETA ports in one of these expansion slots here. So let's go on and take a look at PETA ports. PETA are the ones we're going to start with, and so here is a close-up of the 2 connectors. So you can see them. They're 40 pins. They are normally, see right down here at the bottom, they're normally near the power connector, and if there's a floppy connector, which not many of them's going to have that anymore, and then that'll be on there too. All right, let's take a look at what documentation would look like. If you were looking at the same documentation for the motherboard we just saw, here are the PETA ports. Up here at the top, even though I don't have it circled, there's the 4 SATA ports. But I wanted to show you a close-up of the documentation. This is going to be relevant in a later presentation. So notice how the primary, this is labeled PRI-IDE. That's primary PATA connector, and it's closest to the edge of the motherboard. And then here on the right is the secondary SEC_IDE. That's how the manufacturer labeled it. They do not have to label it. It does not have to be labeled on the motherboard. It usually is, but they don't have to. There's no rule that says they have to. So last thing I want to look at is cables. So here on the top are PATA cables, and the very top cable up here, the one labeled older PATA, that cable right there was a 40 conductor cable, and that cannot be used, even though people will sell it to you on the internet today or through a store. That cannot be used with today's PATA drives. Instead, you need an 80 conductor cable, which is these two right here, the one in the middle that's black and the one that's gray. Notice how each of these cables that I've got shown here have three connectors. One connector goes to the motherboard, and then two connectors are to support one or two devices. If you have one device, you'll put it out here. If you have two devices, you'll put it, these two connectors at the end. And we'll go over that during the configuration series. So for today, what's important is this, to make sure you get an 80 conductor. And the reason it's 80 conductor, this 40 conductor one, what they did to change it was they added a ground wire to each of those to prevent crosstalk for the higher speeds. And this one here, it shows you the connectors are very, very close together for the two devices. That actually would be hard in a case to manipulate. This is actually the better cable right here that has some space for you. Here on the bottom are SATA cables. You can see a SATA cable comes in different lengths. The red one is, about 8 inches long, and it doesn't matter which end goes to the motherboard, which end goes to the device that you would connect to it. One thing of note is right here on this blue one, this is about 18 inches long, I'd say, if you extended it out, but right here, this 90-degree angle right there, that connector, you can buy SATA cables that have a 90-degree connector, and it makes it easier for some case designs for when you're attaching it to your optical drives, your hard drives. It's just the way you route your cables and stuff. It's just easier if you had one and not have to, sometimes you don't have a space to bend it, like for this end down here. So but which end connects to where, it doesn't matter. So that's your introduction to PATA and SATA. More coming.